All right, guys, Wes here. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are going to be talking about the future of God of War Ragnarok, including what the likelihood is that we will get future expansions or DLC. We have some statements from the director of the game, Eric Williams, that I'll be diving into that do paint a disappointing future, but just like the shrines in God of War Ragnarok, anything is possible. So in this video, I'll be going over all of the possibilities. Is the Norse Saga officially over, or are we going to return to the Nine Realms one last time in the form of an expansion? Stick around until the end of the video because you guys do not want to miss it. Also, guys, I'm giving away a PS5 and a game copy of your choice for 90,000 subscribers. Those full details will be at the end of the video. God of War Ragnarok was one of the most successful games of 2022, and aside from being one of the fastest selling first-party Sony games of all time, it won a laundry list of awards and was one of the first true console selling games for the PS5. Granted, the PlayStation 5 only recently became readily available for purchase, but the insane success of God of War Ragnarok has certainly helped push people to finally go out and buy a new console instead of just sticking with the PS4 after all of these years. Now, recently we've been talking quite a bit about God of War 6 and where the franchise is going next, but Sony and Santa Monica Studios may have more in store for us before making the transition to the new God of War setting. In my previous videos, I talked about where the franchise is going next. My guess personally is ancient Egyptian mythology, and it's confirmed that Ragnarok is going to be the final entry in the Norse mythology arc for Kratos, but just because the game is out doesn't mean we're quite done. Recently, a number of rumors have surfaced regarding DLC plans for God of War Ragnarok and what that could mean to the timing of God of War 6 development and reveal. Interestingly, interviews with the game's director Eric Williams seem to contradict these rumors, but given how secretive Santa Monica Studios and other AAA studios like to be with their projects nowadays, I don't think anything has been officially taken off the table. God of War Ragnarok was a massive success for everyone involved. Despite launching in a quite competitive time of the year and facing off with games like Modern Warfare 2 and Sonic Frontiers, Ragnarok managed to be the fastest selling first-party PlayStation game of all time, reportedly moving 5.1 million units in its first week. Part of that may also have to do with the fact that Ragnarok was the first cross-gen game in the history of God of War. In fact, I think it's the only God of War game to launch on multiple platforms, period, and with the PC port surely in development, those sales numbers are likely going to continue climbing over the next few years. Amazing what can happen when you don't lock a good game to one system, right? Despite the scarce availability of the PlayStation 5 console, Sony reported that 82% of Ragnarok's physical copies were sold for the PlayStation 5, while only 18% were sold for the PS4, which wasn't what I was expecting at all. Sony also claims that God of War Ragnarok sold a whopping 51% faster than the 2018 franchise refresh did, which is extremely impressive. Ragnarok was also nominated for 10 categories at the 2022 Game Awards and walked away with 6 of them, which is about as close to a sweep as Sony could have asked for in a year where Elden Ring also released. With numbers like that, you would expect some kind of post-launch support to keep the ball rolling, right? Well, not exactly. According to Santa Monica Studios, God of War Ragnarok is going to be receiving a New Game Plus mode at some point in spring of this year. This New Game Plus update may also end up adding different armor pieces, as well as other upgrades like we saw with the 2018 version, which I'm sure will help breathe some new life into the game. But that's obviously just a new update. Now, the current discussion in the community is whether or not this is just a simple update to add New Game Plus to the game, or if something else major is coming as well. With the game as successful as God of War Ragnarok, it would totally make sense to have a hefty expansion, but the game's director Eric Williams recently shut down those rumors, or did he? In a recent interview with Kinda Funny Games, Williams was asked about Ragnarok DLC, to which he said, "I don't know, man. God of War Ragnarok is big, and I think we put everything we had into it, so I wouldn't count on it." So on one hand, he makes it pretty clear that they're not planning on making something new for Ragnarok, but he doesn't definitively shut down that idea. Personally, I think there's a decent chance that Ragnarok ends up getting an expansion somewhere down the line, similar to how Horizon Forbidden West is getting an expansion, but it wouldn't be anytime soon, especially if Williams is being honest about there not being anything in the works right now. Obviously, it doesn't take as much time to make an expansion pack as it does a full-fledged game, so it would be a good idea to pump out some kind of DLC pack for God of War Ragnarok while the gaming world is awaiting God of War 6, which isn't coming for at least another 4 or 5 years. That being said, Santa Monica Studios are a very passionate studio who won't release anything they're not absolutely confident it's worth paying for. So you have to wonder if they're going to put out some kind of expansion. The clock is ticking on Ragnarok DLC because obviously they can't release an expansion in 2 to 3 years if they want it to be a big deal. If Ragnarok is going to get a DLC, it's going to launch sometime in early 2024 at the absolute latest. So it really comes down on whether or not Santa Monica Studios is going to commit to making something new and whether or not Sony will give them the time and funding to do so. We know a new God of War game is in development. Whether or not Cory Barlog will be taking the creative lead just yet, or if it's a new project that he's working on, that's kind of another thing that's in the community. community, which is like, what is Cory Barlog currently working on? And then you've got the possibility of a spin-off game with Atreus as the lead character, similar to how we got Spider-Man PS4 and then Miles Morales on the PS5. But I've got a feeling Cory Barlog has been working on a new God of War game for a while. Now, in case you didn't know, Cory Barlog was the main creative head behind the 2018 God of War game, but he took a backseat for God of War Ragnarok, giving the main directing duties to Eric Williams. But Cory actually told Eric Williams that 3 things needed to happen. And here's a brief spoiler alert warning if you guys have not beaten the game. Ragnarok's gotta happen, Atreus has to leave, and Brock has to die. Why would he give Eric Williams specific instructions if it wasn't for a reason? We know that the Norse Saga has got to continue at some point, especially with how the game ended with Sindri not happy at all at Atreus, which that could be one of the main setups for God of War 6, or it could be one of the main setups for a spin-off game with Cory Barlog taking the reins, or it could just be God of War 6 and how we go from one mythology to the next. But like I said, there's a reason that Cory Barlog gave the directing duties to Eric Williams. That way he could focus more time and effort on God of War 6 or this new spin-off game, or a full expansion for God of War Ragnarok where Atreus is the main character and we get to see what ends up happening between Sindri and Atreus. With the franchise's main creative lead hard at work on the continuation for the God of War franchise, you may want to write off all of the possibility of an expansion for Ragnarok, but I actually disagree. Barlog wasn't involved with Ragnarok outside of being an executive producer, meaning the Ragnarok creative team led by Eric Williams will have a decent amount of time and space to make a new story with the foundation they already laid out. Some community members have started suggesting that we may have some kind of expansion for Ragnarok starring Kratos' son Atreus, like I said, which would make total sense. Without spoiling too much about Ragnarok's main story, Atreus played a much larger part in the conflict this time around, and if there's going to be a major story expansion, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Sony Santa Monica decided to expand on his story even more, perhaps making him the main character. Remember the Left Behind expansion for the first Last of Us game? What if we got a similar style expansion pack for Ragnarok but starring Atreus? Kratos' Norse story is more or less wrapped up for now, and Santa Monica Studios likely doesn't want to mess with that ending, but that doesn't mean they couldn't do more with his son. There's so many stories that they could tell with Atreus as the main character, and if God of War 6 is going to change the settings on us again, it's very likely that Atreus will be cut out of the story altogether. So why not try to wrap up Atreus' official journey while they still can? So all of this raises the biggest question: is God of War dead until God of War 6 comes out? If Ragnarok truly is not going to get any kind of DLC, does that mean we're just going to have to be replaying God of War Ragnarok in 2018 over and over again until Santa Monica Studios finally releases the next game? Well, not exactly. Like I said, I'm pretty sure we're going to get some kind of follow-up DLC or expansion pack for God of War Ragnarok, especially with Cory Barlog working on the next game and the Ragnarok creative team still intact. God of War 6 is likely not going to release for another 4 to 5 years, like I said, and with Ragnarok's insane success, I find it hard to believe that Sony isn't going to try to fast track some kind of expanded story. And it's not like Santa Monica Studios doesn't have the ideas for where the story could go. Not to mention, I'm sure Sonny Soljic is ready and willing to work, so that's also another great point. Sony did an incredible job with God of War Ragnarok, and I personally am ready to see where his story continues. It's also worth noting that the PC port of Ragnarok is all but confirmed at this point, especially after how successful the 2018 game Steam port was. In case you didn't know, when God of War 2018 dropped on Steam in early 2022, it sold over 1 million copies within days of its launch, and it remained one of the most popular Sony games on the platform. With Sony's recent commitment to bringing games to the PC and the immense success of the 2018 God of War on Steam, I am absolutely certain that God of War Ragnarok is going to get a PC port in the near future, but unless some kind of DLC comes out for Ragnarok, that PC port may end up being the only piece of the new God of War content until the next game drops, or perhaps there will be some kind of director's cut for Ragnarok like there has been with other first-party Sony games like Ghost of Tsushima and possibly The Last of Us 2, assuming the leaks are accurate. But unless Sony and Santa Monica Studios come to an agreement about Ragnarok expansion in the near future, it's pretty likely we will be waiting another 4 to 5 years for new God of War content. Overall, I think there are a number of things that can happen over the next year or two. God of War 6 likely isn't going to drop until 2026 or 27, but if an expansion is going to come out for Ragnarok, it will need to happen within the next 12 to 18 months. Ragnarok is selling amazingly and will continue to do so over time, which gives Santa Monica Studios some wiggle room in regards to when they can drop an expansion, but at the end of the day, it's going to have to happen before the game is too old, which is why I think early to mid 2024 is the cutoff. I don't think Sony wants to just kill the God of War franchise until God of War 6 comes out, and as much as they would love to get God of War 6 in people's hands within the next couple of years, that's just not going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if Sony wants to get some kind of new God of War content out within the next year or two, but if Eric Williams is being honest about there being no plan plans currently for Ragnarok DLC, I'm not sure how realistic an expansion actually is. You never know. Now, my prediction is we'll get the New Game Plus update in the next few months, a PC port announcement a few months after that, or maybe at the same time, and then maybe an expansion in late 2023 or early 24. But for the most part, I think we're just gonna have to wait for God of War 6. So get ready to replay God of War Ragnarok a few more times while we wait for the next God of War, or hopefully the next expansion. Well, guys, that is gonna wrap it up with this video. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. I'm giving away a PS5 and a game of your choice. To enter, all you have to do is subscribe to my channel, comment your Twitter handle, send proof that you're following to either my Twitter or Discord, and I'll also be doing a bonus entry if you follow my Twitch and join my Discord. All of the links are in the description or pinned comment, and the winner will be announced at 90,000 subscribers. Do me a favor, guys, click the like button, subscribe to the channel with your notifications turned on if you enjoyed this video. Thank you all for watching. This has been Wes. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section as well. Do you think we're going to get a God of War Ragnarok expansion? Will Atreus be the main character? Are we going to get a spin-off game, or are we going to have to wait for new God of War content until God of War 6? But until next time, this has been Wes, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.